Hello everyone, welcome back to It's a Wonderful Podcast, and what a treat we have for you today. You know that this summer we are getting a whole bunch of new guests to join me to talk about those old movies we all love so much. And this week he is debuting? I don't know how to say words. He is debuting. It is his first time on It's a Wonderful Podcast, and I'm very happy to have him here. I've been wanting to get him on for quite a while, and now I guess it all just worked out. And he has picked the movie today, but he will tell us, I'm sure, what that is. Once I introduce him, James White, hello.
Hey Morgan, how are you today?
I am doing wonderful. I'm very excited because I got to watch this movie again.
It's such a great movie, isn't it?
It really is. Why don't you go ahead and tell everyone what you picked today? Of course, I let the guest pick. I kind of... It was always a thing that I did with older shows I did. I would always let the guest choose a certain topic or whatever. And with It's a Wonderful Podcast in its current state, it opens up the conversation to things that, while I may not necessarily choose first time, doesn't mean I don't like them. But yes, James, what is this movie?
Well, it was hard for me to actually pick a movie, man. I wanted to go through about 5 or 6 different movies, and I'm looking through. It's like, all right, you guys did that one. Yeah, you guys did that one too. Yep, you did that one too. But one of my favorite movies that I was really introduced to just a few years ago is the 1944 film noir classic Double Indemnity, the great Billy Wilder. It's really what revolutionized the film noir. You know, it's kind of what set the stage for all those movies to come. And in my opinion, it's not been topped. You know, it is the best film noir that I've ever seen. I even put it up there, you know, ahead of Maltese Falcon. I don't really consider Casablanca too much of a film noir, because it doesn't really have the femme fatale that you expect from a film noir. I still think Casablanca is a better film in the long run, but straight film noir, I don't think you can top Double Indemnity.
I mean, that's a bold statement right from the get-go, and I appreciate that a lot. I would arguably say that it isn't even Billy Wilder's best film noir.
What are you putting above it?
I'm putting Sunset Boulevard above it.
Yeah, but Sunset Boulevard really built on everything that Double Indemnity laid the path for.
I don't disagree, but I still think it's a better film.
You get the opening surprise in Sunset Boulevard that you're going to do flashbacks. This is very similar to what they do in Double Indemnity. And I think that with Double Indemnity, with Fred MacMurray and Barbara Stanwyck, Billy was able to just kind of subvert expectations, casting 2 really popular film stars that are not thought of as, you know, despicable people that they are portraying in this film. And you're expecting something that you don't get, and I think they really rise to the occasion. It just stands out more to me than Sunset Boulevard, even though there's more iconic moments in Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah, I do like that as well. Casting such I always like casting such these good-hearted icons in certain grey, darker roles. I always go back to Henry Fonda in Once Upon a Time in the West as the perfect example of something like that. The good guy portraying the bad guy with such a surprise there. But that is really what's great about film noir anyways, that everybody is very grey. Pun completely intended because of the beautiful black and white that all film noirs are in.
Right.
But yeah, when it comes to Sunset Boulevard, just to start off with, yes, there's more iconic stuff in there, but I actually feel like Norma Desmond is the best noir character there is. Just because I think maybe it's something to do with my own feelings and my own the way my own mind works, but I think Norma Desmond and her struggle of reality and her desire for the fantasy and not coming to terms with what's actually going on and being happy, living in her own world, even, to the point of making everybody else's lives kind of difficult, but they sort of go along with it just to help her because she's that damaged.
Right.
Maybe that's what I really like. I mean, that is what I really like about Sunset Boulevard.
Sunset Boulevard is a fantastic film. I mean, and nobody's going to say otherwise.
No, but so is Double Indemnity. And I do agree with you when you say that he kind of... Billy Wilder, 1944... Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this film noir, and like you said, he builds on that later on. But a lot of the trademarks, for lack of a better word, are very, very noticeable in Double Indemnity. It's what is fascinating about film noir in the sense that it always brings up moral questions and has some of the most intriguing performances in movie history, I would say. The genre itself.
And it's such a well-balanced cast, too. Sunset Boulevard, you have one strong performance, I think, carrying that movie more than anything. But with Double Indemnity, you have 3 really, really good parts in there with Fred MacMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and Edward G. Robinson is incredible as Keyes, as Barton Keyes. And I personally think it was a crime he was not even nominated for an Oscar for that movie. Double Indemnity got 7 Oscar nominations, didn't win any of them, but Edward G. Robinson wasn't even nominated.
Scandalous.
Because I think he gives the best performance in that entire movie. Also, similar to MacMurray and Stanwyck, playing good guys, everybody has that picture of Edward G. Robinson as this bad guy of, the 20s and 30s and all this stuff. And for him to play this morally upright, insurance adjuster, it's just so out of character for him as well, but it's such a strong performance, and it's really a crime that he wasn't nominated.
I mean, he's definitely the most good-hearted person in the movie. I think it's fair to say. Or at least most good-hearted major character. And it's not a big cast. It's really quite a small cast. Very much centred around those 3. And from those 3, Edward G. Robinson has definitely the least to do.
But I think he does the most with what he has.
That is fair. It's been quite some time since I last saw Double Indemnity before watching it again for this recording. And from what I remembered, and from what I started to sort of feel again towards the beginning of this movie, I was just thinking, Stanwyck is killing this. Stanwyck is putting Fred MacMurray to shame, and Fred MacMurray himself gives a great performance.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do almost kind of agree with you. When Edward G. Robinson comes in and has a bit more to do slightly later on in the movie, he is absolutely killing every single word of dialogue and every little movement. And it seems like Billy Wilder just knows how to direct him.
Yeah.
Which is kind of odd, really, when you look at Edward G. Robinson's career of being in, Little Caesar and these gangster movies where he's like this scumbag person, and whether he's down on his luck or just kind of a violent, tough guy.
I completely agree. It's the direction of Billy Wilder is just really the center stage. That and the cinematography, because it's a beautifully shot film as well.
Of course it is.
But just staying on Edward G. Robinson, I think that he just, every scene he's in, it doesn't matter how much he has to do in the scene, he carries the weight of the picture kind of on his shoulders. It seems like he steals every scene he's in just with 2 or 3 lines of dialogue, and he's just really the standout for me. Even though MacMurray and Stanwyck are fantastic, and Stanwyck is another one that she doesn't have to say a lot, just her presence on camera and kind of the thoughtfulness behind her eyes, you can get a lot out of that performance just from looking at her.
The sign of a good actor is use your eyes properly.
That's right.
Although, having said that, Edward G. Robinson has such a unique way of speaking. He's got it, and whether it's his voice or he's kind of very, very fast talking in this movie.
Well, it's kind of the sign of the era too. That was very very popular back then. Is to do all the fast talking. Subtitles are a blessing.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, even though I don't. I know. I might actually be in the minority of this. I know quite a lot of people that do like to watch everything with subtitles.
Oh, see, I am. I watch almost everything with subtitles. Yeah.
Maybe that just never occurred to me to do, but I never watch English language with subtitles on.
See, yeah, I thought I was in the minority, and then I heard about all these people, of our
There's
generation.
a lot of people that do it.
It's a very very popular thing, and I did it just to catch minute details and things like that for trivia reasons or just for film appreciation reasons. That way I didn't miss a line here or there. And I don't read every line, but it really helps, especially with movies like this and of that generation, to be able to pick up on things you might miss on first viewing. So maybe you're able to retain a little bit more after one viewing as opposed to rewatching it a couple times.
Yeah, I guess whether it's little sort of...
But it's a double-edged sword because then if you're looking at subtitles, you're missing out on some of the cinematography, or you're missing out on some things visually that you might not. So.
Yeah, and that might be why, because I often say on any show that I have ever done, mainly this particular show, if I'm being honest, that I am very much a visual viewer of movies. I will look at movies as a painting above a story.
Right.
I know, like, everybody always loves let's predict the story. You could do this very easily with Double Indemnity. You could sit there at the start of Double Indemnity and sort of plan out what you think might happen, what's going to happen, who's going to, find out what's happening, who's going to team up with who's going to murder who, and that can be fun for some people. That's never been how I view movies. Right. I look at each frame, each scene, and ask the movie, what are you trying to tell me?
Right.
And then I get that from that particular shot. That's why some of my favourite movies are some of the most sort of beautifully striking cinematographical, if that's a word, movies.
It is now.
It is now. I mean, it's a great word. I mean, it's got about 84 syllables, but...
That's right. No, I agree with you. I tend to appreciate dialogue, I think, a little bit more. I love, like, a good Aaron Sorkin screenplay, things like that.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of moments. My favorite movie... I change it up what my favorite movie is, but today my favorite movie is Jaws. But my favorite scene in Jaws is between two. It's either the Indianapolis scene, where they're going over that story and Robert Shaw is just incredible, or the most underrated scene in that movie is just Quint with his son at the dinner table, just doing the little hand gestures, and he's copying him. And there's no dialogue in that scene, but you get so much humanity and so much of what Brody is going through just in that little glimpse. So I see where you're coming from. Is if you pay attention to every scene visually, you're going to be able to get a lot more than if you listen to just the dialogue. But there's also a good portion of movies that the dialogue is just above and beyond the cinematography. And I think this movie, Double Indemnity, is a great blend of the two. You have beautiful cinematography with witty, whip smart dialogue.
And obviously helped by, like we've said, 3 kind of stellar performances.
Right.
And it is kind of a little bit ridiculous how it won 0 Oscars from its 7 nominations. I actually think Barbara Stanwyck was maybe nominated for lead actress, I think, 5 times or so in maybe 10 years. Never won.
Wow.
And one of them was for this.
Right. I was actually doing a little bit of research after rewatching it and looking up some things, and found some interesting information from TCM, of all places, of course. And
Okay.
they were talking about how the screenwriting partner of Billy Wilder, I cannot
Yes.
remember his name. Yeah, he did not want
It's
any
Ra-
part. Yeah, he didn't want
It's
any part
Raymond
of this.
Chandler.
No, in this one it was, but his traditional screenwriting partner.
Oh, I see.
Right. He didn't want any part of it because of the elements of the film he thought were lewd and things. So yes, Raymond Chandler came on,
Yeah.
who is a renowned crime writer in his own. But Chandler and Wilder hated each other. They did not get along whatsoever. And Chandler was an alcoholic and all these things. And when it was nominated for Best Screenplay, Billy Wilder didn't invite Chandler to the Oscars along with it, which Chandler was furious about.
Yeah.
But the ironic part is that in 45, just a year later, Billy Wilder won Best Screenplay and Best Director and Best Picture for The Lost Weekend, which was based on Chandler, as it follows an alcoholic writer. So
Wow.
the irony was just amazing.
That's fun. That's fascinating trivia. I had no idea The Lost Weekend was based on Raymond Chandler's alcoholism.
It's not 100% based, but it's about an alcoholic
Let's use
writer,
the air
and they
quotes.
said that there was a lot
Let's use the air quotes.
Yeah, that's right.
Based on air quotes.
But yeah,
that's fascinating.
I was just completely blown away when I found that out. It's awesome.
I think maybe the conflict between those two perhaps comes from the sense that, like, I've always got the sense that Billy Wilder is kind of, even when he's doing his darker movies and he's noir, he's kind of a funny guy.
Mm-hmm.
He knows how to, and honestly, my favourite Billy Wilder movies, I prefer a Billy Wilder comedy.
I do too. Something Like That, or The Apartment.
The Apartment, or
right.
yeah. Raymond Chandler certainly does not come across very comedic.
No.
So maybe there's a little conflict there. Maybe I like to think Billy Wilder's cracking some jokes, and Raymond Chandler's having absolutely none of it and just wants to get on with the writing. Billy Wilder's saying, "Well, let's go out for a drink."
Yeah, well, maybe not have a drink. I think Chandler was sneaking off to have the drinks.
Well, that's yeah. See, there's me not thinking and being insensitive to Raymond Chandler's alcoholism. I do apologise, Mr. Chandler. I'm sorry about that. But let's get back onto this movie. For those who do not know, it is basically one guy meets one girl. They plan to murder her husband for the insurance money. Yay! A film about money and
plot.
Insurance. It's very straightforward. I tend to like it when insurance can be made interesting in movies.
Yeah, not even just insurance, but the part that Edward G. Robinson plays in this film as being the insurance adjuster, the person that's investigating these claims, and it's gripping. Like the way
really is.
The way he's kind of putting the pieces together as basically a detective. So yes, it's an insurance picture, but it's a crime picture, and you get as much out of him investigating it as you would if it was a police detective investigating it.
I mean, and that's probably where Raymond Chandler comes into it, with the more detective elements of the whole thing. Anyway, along the same lines, you could almost say It's a Wonderful Life is a building and loan movie.
Yeah,
it's a movie about mortgages.
That's right.
And banking, which is, again, it's ridiculous how certain people are able to make, whether it's Frank Capra or Billy Wilder, able to make seemingly boring financial matters very, very interesting.
If you have a good filmmaker, you can make absolutely anything interesting.
I like to believe that's true. I like to believe that. I mean, I think there may be certain things. I'm now trying to think of something ridiculous that I could never possibly find interesting, regardless of who the filmmaker may be.
I mean, I'm not a person that likes, running as a hobby. However,
Running.
Chariots of Fire is a great movie.
Swimming.
Swimming.
Competitive swimming is the most boring thing.
And yet, if you had
But also
Christopher
it's a
Nolan
sport.
doing a Michael Phelps film, it would probably
Michael
be
Phelps
fantastic.
biopic.
Yes, it would probably be entertaining.
Probably would be very, very entertaining. I guess if it's a sports movie, you can make it entertaining because you just have to throw in a bit of epic music, bit of is he gonna win? Are they
Yeah,
gonna win?
absolutely.
No, and then they win at the last second. Everybody celebrates.
That's how sports movies go. Even if they
That
didn't
is,
win in the last second, even if they won right off the bat, they're gonna make it feel like they won in the last second.
yeah, absolutely they are. But yes, Double Indemnity.
Yeah,
Screw
please.
sports movies. What are some of your favourite, whether it's scenes, whether it's lines of dialogue? Do you have any from this movie that really sort of stand out?
Really, the back and forth between, between Neff and between Mrs. Dietrichson, so between MacMurray and between Stanwyck, in their first encounter, as he's being flirtatious with her, and really the line where she goes, the speed limit in this state is 45 miles an hour. You were going about 90. I love that line, as he just keeps kind of egging her on in his interest when
Yeah.
she's showing none of it. But you can tell that
And
there was something
that's
behind that. Yeah.
that's a Billy Wilder line right there.
Oh,
as well.
absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely, it is.
Um,
I happen. Yeah. Go ahead.
no. I was just gonna elaborate a little bit more, but go.
No, please do.
Um, there's so many back and forth moments where they say, suppose this, suppose that, suppose this, suppose that, and it felt like a tennis match. You're watching the ball go one side to the other, and then finally, Stanwyck just, hammers it home, and you see MacMurray just kind of fade away over to the liquor cabinet just to get a drink and concedes the point to her. And I love that
Yeah.
back and forth.
Some of the best thing about film noir, any film noir movie, is always some back and forth between two people trying to one up each other all the time.
Absolutely.
Whether they are, lovers like in this movie, whether they are business partners, whatever it may be, friends, new acquaintances, a good back and forth where, like you said, somebody just hits one home, just hits the winner, if we're going to use the analogy of the tennis match.
That's right.
And it can really, really make you just... It's difficult to tear your eyes away from these type of movies because you don't want to miss any second, because you know that a certain little shot might just tell you something
Yep.
that nothing else in the movie is going to tell you. And you have to remember that for the rest of the movie, because it might mean something completely different if you had missed that.
Yep.
And that's another thing that I love about this. I happen to really like the actual, when most of the action sort of starts to happen, the actual enacting of the murder of Mr. Dietrichson on the train, when Fred MacMurray obviously puts on the clothes and gets the crutches and walks through the train, and his face is always just hidden or in shadow. And of course we have to talk about the shadows because it's film noir and lighting
Right.
is the best thing ever, and shadows, and yes, it's so creepy, and yes, but when he's walking to the observation deck of the train on his crutches, just passing all the people, they're paying no attention to him. He gets outside, he's ready to, get off and go, and
Dun dun
he thinks
dun.
he's won. And then the one dude's just sat there,
Yep.
and he has to get rid of him. And it's that little split moment when he thinks, I've done it, I'm gonna, reveal myself a little bit here. And he just spots him, and I forget his name. I forget that guy's name.
I can't remember his name either. It's it's not going to come to me, so we'll just have dead air if I think about it.
But obviously,
I remember
he
he's from
also
Oregon.
comes back. He is from Oregon. He is going back to Oregon. I always love how these movies are set in like LA as well. Film noirs always paint a really nice picture of Los Angeles as this absolutely horrendous place, which is always kind of funny. But yeah, obviously he comes back into the movie a little bit later on when Fred MacMurray's starting to think, well, obviously they've committed the murder.
Mm-hmm.
They've
the perfect murder.
got the perfect murder. Everything's always about the perfect crime. One of my favourite perfect crime movies is Alfred Hitchcock's Rope.
Yes, and I watched that for the first time about a month ago.
It was a great movie.
It is really great.
All in that, again, quote unquote, one shot, one take movie.
Right.
That is just very cleverly cut.
Yeah, it's just edited
certain
perfectly.
Few places. But yeah, because you get the sense that Fred MacMurray is starting to, he's a little bit nervous. I mean, he's quite a lot nervous. He thinks he's getting away with stuff. He's picking his words very carefully. Obviously, he works very closely with Edward G. Robinson in the insurance company. And Edward G. Robinson and him seem to be all in sync. Mm-hmm. They seem to understand each other. Nothing seems to be amiss. And then he notices that one guy from the train is sat outside Edward G. Robinson's office.
Yes.
And that whole scene where Edward G. Robinson's just talking to him and he's just sort of saying, no, this is not the man I saw. This is showing him a picture of Mr. Dietrichson who was murdered. This is not the man I saw on the train. And then he's questioning where he knows Fred MacMurray from, where he knows
right.
Mr. Neff from. And he's just, no, I don't think I go fishing. No, I've never been to Oregon. I love scenes like that, where it's so very close to just completely toppling, but it doesn't quite do it. I absolutely adore it.
No, I completely agree. I think that's one of the best scenes in the movie because you really get just the reactions from Fred MacMurray's face tell the whole story. Yeah. He doesn't really need a whole lot of dialogue in that other than saying, no, I don't go trout fishing, I don't fish. But you can see the worry and the panic buried under the surface. Every time you see the guy, I just looked at it was Mr. Jackson. Every
Mr.
time
Jackson.
Yeah, every time Mr. Jackson just kind of, he takes a glance over his shoulder and he's like, I know this guy from somewhere, but where is it? And you see, MacMurray kind of turn and try to hide his face a little bit more, and just that tension that's built up in that office is just phenomenal.
Yeah, very similar situation as well when Edward G. Robinson brings in Barbara Stanwyck.
Yes.
I'm just gonna keep using people's actors' names because Phyllis Dietrichson. There you go.
Yep.
He brings her in to sort of question about the insurance policy and what exactly happened to her husband. And I believe that is also the scene when you find out right after she leaves, right after she gets kind of mad and that maybe there's something being insinuated. That you find out about what happened to her first husband.
Right.
No, sorry.
Not her first husband.
Not her first husband.
Yeah, his first wife.
His first wife.
Right.
His first wife. And that she may have had a hand in putting an end to that poor woman as well.
Heavily implied, at least.
Heavily implied. And also brought up to her by Walter later on.
Right, yeah, because you have that,
to which she
that nice
does not
scene
want to
with
talk
Walter and Lola, where Lola is, just explaining why she's having such problems with the death of her father, thinking that it wasn't, any sort of accident. And Lola was kind of onto her from the beginning, from years ago, and like I said, insinuating that her mother might not have died of natural causes. as
Lola's
Phyllis
actually
was,
a great little character.
she was.
She's not in it a lot at all.
No,
but she
and
plays
with a lesser
such a
actress,
key
she might have
role.
been forgettable. But she's maybe in what, 3 or 4 scenes. But
Yeah.
she's able to really get her character a lot of depth in those scenes, or at least some emotion in those scenes.
And I mean, it's exactly the kind of thing a noir film is so good at, is to set up this kind of friendly relationship between then Walter and Lola.
Right.
Who, when, she's confiding in him about how hard she's finding the death of her father and how she suspects it was Phyllis, having no idea that it was also Walter.
Right.
And I just love stuff like that, because I love it when, as an audience, we know more than the characters.
Right.
I mean, you get that a lot in mystery movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's some exceptions, but you do very often get it in noir movies when you are well aware of everything that's going on, and you're just watching the characters try and figure it out. And that's where the fun comes from. That's where the entertainment comes from. And that's where the sort of, whether it's shock or relief or any sort of emotional feeling, that's always where it comes from. It is knowing that characters should make a certain decision, should say one certain thing a little bit differently, but then doing something that you maybe didn't want them to do, didn't expect them to do, and that ending up hurting them in the end, as it does with Fred MacMurray.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the audience knows things that the characters don't know, and you're able to have a tightly knit story, you get so much suspense out of that and so much tension, because you know already the outcomes of certain things, and you have to see how the characters are going to react, or what their decision-making process is going to do to affect certain outcomes. And it can just put chills up your back for one thing, or it can bring tears to your eyes for another, knowing that they're making the wrong choices. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, okay, Barbara Stanwyck in this movie. Phyllis Dietrichson. In terms of the, you brought it up before, film noirs often have this femme fatale. Is she fairly highly ranked, fairly highly thought of in your estimation, in terms of a femme fatale?
Yeah, I really think she is very near the top, if not the top of mine, for a femme fatale, because she does so much, as I was saying, with subtle dialogue, but then also does so much with quippy dialogue. And she's able to balance the two of being vulnerable. As you see in some of her later scenes, she shows a lot of vulnerability, but is captivating in it.
Yeah.
And her character as a whole is just so cunning and so calculated, and she's able to make you sympathetic for her at the beginning, until you realize how much, that she has going on behind those eyes, and how much she's really planning, and how much she's manipulating. And then you grow to despise her as the type of character she is, and then she comes full circle and shows vulnerability again at the end, and it's just a tidal wave of different emotions that she's able to get out of the audience.
This very damaged character who is kind of living her life just slightly above her inner demons. She feels as though she is completely in control of every situation, but like you just mentioned, right at the end she shows that no, she will just resort back to that. Very similar in that way to Norma Desmond. Yes. In the sense that she resorts back to the things that are, she resorts back to her inner demons when she feels she may be in control of the whole situation. One of my favourite elements to this movie is another thing you also brought up before. It is the it is the fact that the movie is told in a flashback a little bit, and it keeps going back to the end of the movie every so often, and the whole movie is Fred MacMurray, Walter Neff, telling the story of the movie through this, like, I can't work out what it is, to be honest with you. It looks like a telephone.
Yeah, it's a recording device for inner office memos, so it like records onto like a recording cylinder.
I mean, I never used one of those. I don't know about you. Have you ever used one of those? Have you ever used one of those weird long things that looks like a? It looks like the end of a trumpet.
Yeah.
It looks like the end of a trumpet that you speak into. It's weird. On a hose pipe. It's weird.
It was like the bell of one of those old-fashioned telephones that you would see, hanging up on the wall, where you take the bell out to your ear and talk into the microphone. Yeah, it was similar to that.
I love stuff like that. I love it all, truly. But yeah, I just love how it's sort of... It's not segmented in that way, but it keeps reminding you that, oh yeah, he's just telling us this story. This is not something that nobody knows.
Right.
This is being told back to us. It's all, in that sense, from his perspective. Could you refer to him as an unreliable narrator?
You could, but I don't know that he is, because he's very self-deprecating in his narration. He's not making himself out to be the good guy. He's
but also
telling, go ahead.
Could even the fact that he is self-deprecating just be him showing his guilt, and in that sense he's an unreliable narrator?
It's possible. I don't like to think of it that way, but yeah, it's something to at least put in the column of it's a possibility.
I'm just bringing up random questions to ask. I just love delving into the questions that noir can ask us.
Right.
It is truly the genre, I think, that asks the most human, moral questions. Maybe aside from sci-fi, which often does that really well as well.
Right.
But I really like the fact that it is told all in narration, and obviously by the end you get to the end, you've already seen the end. Mm-hmm. But the ending is this moment of, it's not this big grandiose shootout or death or anything like that, even though of course there is a certain other death in the movie. Mm-hmm. But the ending itself it's almost disappointment from Edward G. Robinson's part. He's just kind of shocked that his colleague and his friend could do something like this. He's trying to make sense of it, and in the end it's kind of just like they're just sharing a smoke.
Well, it's the end of that film is probably one of my favorite parts of the film, because it's so intimate. Yeah, it's so intimate, and really the love story of Double Indemnity is more of a love story between Keyes and Neff, more so than it is of Neff and of Mrs. Diedrichson, because of their respect for each other, and it's like a father-son relationship through the whole thing. You see Keyes always comes to Neff first to kind of go over his thoughts in his head, and he wants him to be kind of his right-hand man, and you see a lot of respect between the two of them. So yeah, when you see the disappointment at the end, and you see that that he's not going to let him get away with anything that's transpired, he shows that, yes, you're my friend, and I'm not going to allow you to, go on, and if it comes down to having to turn you into the police or whatever, then that's what's going to happen. And the sharing a smoke is just a callback to so many other parts of that movie where, he's getting his cigar lit from Neff, and they just have the role reversed. And
Yeah.
I just think it's very touching, and it's very subtle. And it could have been one of these big shootouts, but Billy Wilder knew that with those two, that's where the story kind of ends. And you don't need to have anything else added on top of it. When you have a good scene like that, you don't really need to go over the top and add to it just because you can, or just because some audience members might want more.
That is a fascinating reading. I actually think that's the first time I've ever heard of this movie being thought of as a love story actually between the two friends of Keys and Neff, and I absolutely love that. Yeah. I'm going to have to watch this again with that in mind now and see it in a whole new perspective, and I think that is what is beautiful about this movie. I also feel like Billy Wilder loves ending his movies on just one little scene of intimate dialogue.
Yep.
Whether it is his comedy movies, his rom-coms, you think of the ending of both Some Like It Hot, The Apartment. They're those little iconic lines of dialogue, especially Some Like It Hot.
Best ending line of all time.
Yeah. No, you don't understand. I'm a guy. Well, nobody's perfect. Because he doesn't care, and it's perfect. You think of The Apartment, which is, I think, I'm paraphrasing, it's been a little while since, but it's something like, you're absolutely perfect, or something like that, which I think is the ending of the Apartment.
Yeah,
which,
again, another one I need to rewatch.
Certainly, I'm due a rewatch of The Apartment, I think. But again, it's just an intimate moment. Less so in Sunset Boulevard.
Yes.
Which is a little more grandiose. But it is kind of all character-driven, at least more than action-driven. But this movie, yeah, very much so. And by this point, Walter has almost realised the evil of his ways, and he has done away with Phyllis. He has killed Phyllis, but not before she shot him first. But she couldn't pull the second shot. She couldn't shoot twice, because could something like that ever happen again? It's just perfect. There's clearly some sort of connection between those two. They couldn't have gone through the movie doing what they were doing if they hadn't have been. If it was just, this is a guy who can help me, murder my husband and claim the insurance. There is a little, as much as maybe Phyllis Dietrichson doesn't want to admit it by the end, there's a little bit of something there.
Yeah, there's just two damaged people, and they're able to kind of fulfill the needs of each other. And, Walter Neff is just this straight-laced guy for the most part, but you can tell that he's not doing this just because he's attracted to Phyllis. He's doing this because he wants to try to see if he can get away with it. He wants to see if he's smarter than Keys. And I think that's more of his motivation than she is, even though it's the attraction at first that gets him involved with it. I think he feels, okay, well, I'm smarter than the smart guys. I can get away with this. I can plan the perfect situation. And I think that's really where his motivations come from, more than getting with Phyllis. But she is such a damaged character just from her interactions with pretty much everybody that's on camera. Her interactions with Walter range from being compassionate to being just enraged, and the same thing when she goes into interview with Keys, and she comes in very kind of melancholy, and by the end she's screaming that she's going to sue and all these things. So she's able to kind of change on a dime, and you can tell that nothing is sincere.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's just perfect. Sometimes it leaves me a little bit speechless, because these type of movies often do that. They make you think so much. It also brings up the question of two damaged people getting together, as it were, for a certain time. Does it help? Does it hinder? Which is such a big question.
It's the age-old question.
Which can't be answered.
No.
But it is just an example of how smart noir movies are, and of how bold I think they are as well, in the sense that questions like that are not often asked in movies, especially today.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it makes these ones so worthwhile watching, checking out. If you've never watched, a noir movie before, if you've never watched this movie before, stuff like that. Even though it's kind of difficult sometimes, not to watch in a sense of what's happening is so horrible that you'll turn your face away and be disgusted by it. But if you look and think a little bit deeper into it, it'll sit with you for days.
Mm-hmm.
And but sometimes the best movies do that. That's what they are for, and that is why we kind of love them, even though they make us have a bit of a mental crisis.
Especially
which is good every
Billy
now and
Wilder
again.
movies.
Especially Billy Wilder movies. Less so his comedies. Go and watch The Apartment after this. You'll be cheerful. Yeah, it'd be. It's fantastic. I love it so much. James, is there anything else you want to say about Double Indemnity? Any other things that you feel you just simply must bring up in a conversation about this movie?
I think people need to just go into this movie knowing that it doesn't matter whether you know what the outcome of the film is. You're pretty much told in the first 2-3 minutes what the outcome of this film is. But it's the path to getting there. It is the journey that you're going on with Fred MacMurray, with Barbara Stanwyck, with Edward G. Robinson, in a very tight Billy Wilder script with beautiful cinematography, with great music coming in. It is a fun but tragic story, and it's really one of those films that, like I said, I first watched this just for the first time maybe 3 years ago, and it's become one of my top favorite films. It's one of those movies that it will grab you and just take you on this journey, and you just go with the ride, and you can pick up something new every time you watch it. I've noticed things just in my rewatch for this that I never picked up on in my previous viewing. So it's a movie that just gets better with age. I mean, it's 1944 when this movie came out, and it holds up to this day. So I love it. It's such a great movie.
It is a very timeless movie as well, I feel. Even though it is, a lot of noir movies do have that aesthetic to them where everybody's wearing a long coat and a hat and a suit, and or all the women are dressed in these gowns and smoking, and it looks like it's the 40s, quite obviously, but it is timeless in that sense. I always feel like movies of any era are at the best when they can be in a time period and recognise they are in a time period without beating you over the head with it.
Yeah, this feels like the 40s, but it feels like the real 40s. It doesn't feel like some exaggerated version of the 40s.
Exactly.
So yeah, it feels like a real lived-in place, and it feels like real people. It's a very grounded film.
Again, I'm going to bring up Sunset Boulevard again. Like I said before, my personal favourite Billy Wilder movie. A very real movie about the damages of when maybe in the 50s all these maybe movies were coming out about and everybody thought, oh, Hollywood's so great, you can go to Hollywood, be a star, be rich, do all these wonderful Hollywood-ish things. But also, let's look at the real thing, and the real thing might be you turn into Norma Desmond.
Yeah.
If you either stay too long, can't move on, it's the real side, it's the gritty side, it's the grounded side, it's the darker side, but a side to the time, whether it, or the side to living in Hollywood in the sense of Sunset Boulevard, is a time that is really worth knowing about. Because we can always have these really great, and it's a big reason why we do this very show, is because we love older movies. We love that time period. And we have this sort of romanticism of it. Sometimes it's nice to realise that it's actually a real place and everybody had their own struggles as well, and it wasn't this perfect era of perfection. There is damaging stuff going on.
Absolutely.
And that is, I think, if you want that realisation, and it's well worth having sometimes, because it can be really rewarding. Film noir is the best genre to do that with. Yes, you get your entertaining mystery in there nearly all the time, or your romance that you might really like, and you'd be able to go on with this story. They're often very simple movies as well, which, as we said before, this is a fairly simple movie. There's nothing overly complex that you need to think about the plot a lot. But it's the questions, it's the depictions of the time or the area and what's going on that is really the standout element to any film noir for me, and certainly with Double Indemnity as well.
Yep. And you're making me want to go revisit Sunset Boulevard now, so thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I mean, I maybe wouldn't do it just yet. Maybe watch something cheerful first.
Yeah.
Maybe go and watch one of the comedies. One of the watch any Billy Wilder movie. The man was a machine for making phenomenal movies one after another.
Yes. Completely agree.
Every single, you can go on a run. If I was really tuned into my movie release dates right now, I could quite easily go on a run of chronological Billy Wilder movies that are just outstanding. And it may last like 15 years, where it's just one after each other of just, yeah, that's a classic, that's great, yeah, that's one of the best, yes, oh, yeah, and again. Is that a miss? No, that's not a miss either. Yeah, and again, very few filmmakers in history have made the career that Billy Wilder has made.
He's a very high batting average.
A very high batting average. Was he good at baseball though? Probably not.
I don't believe so.
I can't imagine Billy Wilder was the best baseball player. I mean, batting a solid 150 maybe. Very poor. I don't know. I don't know why.
You're a newly formed baseball fan, so we'll forgive it.
I mean, I am a newly formed baseball fan. I like baseball, James. I like baseball, even though my chosen team may come into question sometimes.
I like your chosen team. I've watched.
Yeah. Oh, that's very nice.
You're a chosen Mets fan, correct?
I'm a chosen Mets fan.
That's fine.
I'm in no way related to the New York Mets from birth.
But hey, if you had to choose a New York team, at least you chose the Mets instead of jumping on a Yankees bandwagon.
That's what people keep saying to me, James, and I'm very thankful that I chose the team of the people, not the team.
But at the same time, you're in for years of losing, just as I am as an Orioles fan. So.
Yes, but doesn't constant loss just make the wins feel better?
Absolutely. That's what I tell myself for the last 30 years.
I think that's a very positive way to end this episode, James. Constant loss makes the wins feel better. Thank you very much for being on this episode today. It has been an absolute blast. What are you up to? Where can everybody find you at? What do you do?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd, doing all my movie ratings at Gator24. It's G4TOR24. And And I've been competing in some of the trivia fan leagues. You can catch me competing in multiplex and also Full Metal trivia, doing some movie trivia around there, and hopefully winning matches.
It is fair to say, I think, that you are a minor league veteran.
Yes, we'll give it that one.
Which is a good thing to be. There is no shame in that, James.
Hey, we'll take it. I'll take a compliment when I can take one.
I think it was a compliment.
I assume
sounded in my head like it was a compliment. now I'm starting to maybe think it wasn't a compliment. I'm as conflicted as a protagonist in a noir movie, and what a horrendous place for one's mind to be. Thank you again, James, for being here today and recording this episode with me. It has been a blast. It has been episode 64, 5. I've lost count, and I often like to lose count because, as we all know, I'm ridiculous. It's in the mid-60s of episodes of It's a Wonderful Podcast, talking Double Indemnity from 1944, directed by Billy Wilder, starring the great Fred MacMurray, the great Barbara Stanwyck, and the great Edward G. Robinson. Of course, a relation to me. No, he's not really. That's a lie. Until next time, guys, I have one more question for James. Have you seen Midsummer?
I've not seen it yet. I went to see it the other day, and it wasn't playing at the time I was there. So, this week, hopefully.
I'm going to keep asking everybody if they've seen Midsummer because I saw it, and it's my favourite movie of the year. By far.
All right.
Folk horror is the best. I
like Hereditary, so...
Yeah. I'm just happy. I'm just happy all round. It's great. I like being pleased. I like being happy about movies, James. And this movie has made me very happy.
I can't wait to see it.
So is Double Indemnity. So there you go. Guys, thank you again for listening. You can find me on Twitter at the Purple Don with a 3 instead of the E in there, because 3 is the magic number. Or on Instagram at just the Purple Don. Find the show on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Check it out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Castbox, Google Podcasts, various other places. Leave those 5-star rating reviews on the Apple Podcast. It helps a lot, and we will love you forever. And read out your review with a nice big yay, thank you, you're great on the show. Check out Morgan Hasn't Seen with me and Janine. We are in our Fast and Furious series now, and yes, I'm watching the Fast and Furious movies for the first time, and isn't it going swimmingly? Our first episode on that, focusing on the first 2 movies in that franchise, came out this past Wednesday. So go and check that out as well, because, you know, me and Janine like to do stupid things on that show, and, you know, make silly noises and laugh, as opposed to actually talking about the movie we should be talking about, which maybe doesn't bode well for the actual podcast. But I digress. What else can you do? That is about it. Thank you again, guys, for listening to another episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. Until next week, when I don't know what we'll be doing. That's the fun thing about this, having guests on. Yeah, I don't know what we'll be doing. It opens us up to yet more discovery of wonderful older movies, and that is exactly what we love on this show. But thank you for the 17th time, and until next time, bye.